In the distant reaches of space, a mysterious illness spread through the alien world of Eleanor, known to its people as the Silent Plague. Once contracted, the disease rendered the body of the victim into a decaying husk, while the mind remained sharp and aware. For years, the disease was contained within certain lower castes of Eleanor's society, but when it reached the palace and claimed its most revered leader, the queen, chaos erupted. The Leper Queen, as she became known, had once been a powerful ruler, adored by her people. Her strength, wisdom, and the unmatched beauty of her species had earned her the position as their matriarch. Her skin, smooth and adorned with intricate patterns that glowed with the life of her people's culture, was a symbol of her noble birthright. But the Silent Plague did not care for such things. As the illness progressed, the once glorious queen, now rendered pale and skeletal, became a symbol of despair for the entire kingdom. Her condition worsened rapidly, and soon it became clear that no one, not even the highly regarded healers of her kind, could help her. The alien doctors, equipped with centuries of advanced knowledge and medicines, tried and failed to reverse the effects of the disease. The alien race, once proud of their medical prowess, came to a grim realization. The Leper Queen was beyond saving. With her fate sealed, the High Council of Eleanor gathered. Discussions took place behind closed doors, whispering among themselves that the queen had become an embarrassment. To their minds, her disease was a blight upon the kingdom, and even though she had once led with honor, she was now a symbol of weakness. They knew that the only way to maintain the kingdom's dignity was to cast her aside, let her wither in isolation, and hope that the plague would die with her. But not all of the people of Eleanor agreed. The queen's personal attendants, some of her most loyal followers, and even a few members of her family still believed that their queen could be saved. Among them was a small faction that held out hope for the appearance of an outsider, someone from another world, someone who was not bound by their ancient traditions. News had traveled across the galaxy that a human medic, known only as Dr. Damien, had become a legend among the stars. His skills as a healer were unmatched, his compassion for all beings beyond measure. There was talk of humans having an immunity to diseases that ravaged other species. In a desperate move, the queen's loyalists sent word to this human, begging him to come and see if he could perform the impossible, save their queen's life. Dr. Damien's arrival to Eleanor was met with suspicion. Humans, while respected for their ingenuity and intelligence, were seen as inferior by the more advanced races in the galaxy. But the Leper Queen's attendants, determined to give her any hope at all, convinced the authorities to let the human take a look at her. When Dr. Damien entered the Queen's chambers, the sight before him was one of devastation. Her skin was cracked and decayed, and her once beautiful face was now a twisted mask of agony. The disease had eaten away at her, leaving nothing but a shell of the queen she had once been. The stench of death hung heavy in the air, and even the palace's finest healers had already given up. Their refusal to help her was a testament to their belief in the futility of her survival. But Dr. Damien did not share their pessimism. He knelt beside the Leper Queen, his heart aching as he observed the quiet pain in her eyes. The queen, despite her condition, still retained her intelligence, her regal composure. She lifted her hand weakly, as if to touch his face, but the chains that bound her arms prevented her from doing so. A single tear escaped her eye as she looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Can you save me?" she asked, her voice raspy and weak. Dr. Damien looked in her eyes and spoke the only words that mattered. "I will try." The human medic had seen many things in his career, but nothing had prepared him for the challenge before him. He had studied the disease and its symptoms, but it was clear that this was unlike anything he had encountered before. Even with his advanced knowledge, he knew that the Leper Queen's case was extreme. Despite this, he worked tirelessly. He administered treatments and tried to stabilize her condition, using the medicine and technology at his disposal. He connected with her on a deeper level, speaking with her, offering her comfort as he carefully treated her wounds. As the hours stretched into days, the Queen's condition slowly began to stabilize. The alien healers, who had once rejected her, watched in silence. Their eyes narrowed, some with contempt, others with growing curiosity. They had dismissed her as lost, but here was a human who had already made progress that their own people had failed to achieve. Days passed, and Dr. Damien's treatments began to take effect. The Queen's skin, though still fragile, started to regain its luster. The pustules that had marked her body began to shrink, and the life force that had been dimming in her veins began to return. The progress was slow, but it was progress nonetheless. It was then that the alien High Council, those who had condemned her, demanded that Dr. Damien cease his treatment. They had no desire to see their queen restored. In their eyes, she was an embarrassment, and they were ready to move forward without her. The thought of a human outsider saving their queen was unacceptable to them. But Dr. Damien refused. He had made a promise, and he would not break it. He had seen the humanity in the Queen's eyes, and he knew that her survival would mean something far greater than any political agenda. In a tense standoff, the Queen's loyal followers, led by the Queen's closest family members, rallied around Dr. Damien, demanding that the treatment continue. What began as a small rebellion grew into a full-scale clash between those who saw hope in the Queen's restoration and those who viewed her as a liability. The Council's hold on power was threatened. In the end, it was the Queen herself who made the final decision. With her strength restored, she summoned the Council to her chambers. She stood tall, no longer the broken and withered creature they had cast aside, but the regal monarch she had once been. With a voice full of authority, she declared that she would continue to rule, with or without their approval. The High Council had no choice but to acknowledge her will. Dr. Damien had not only saved the Queen's life, he had saved the very soul of Eleanor. The Queen's recovery brought her people together, and under her rule, the kingdom flourished. In time, Dr. Damien was honored by the people of Eleanor, not as a mere outsider, but as a hero, one who had bridged the divide between races and shown them the true meaning of compassion. And as for the Leper Queen, she would forever remember the human who had defied the odds, not only to save her life, but to change the course of her people's future.